I'm a low life, but now people call me the king. Tearing it up with every lyric that I bring to the table. Because I'm willing and able. I'm in more homes than Comcast cable. I got the skill that'll rattle your brain. I'm a threat like Saddam Hussein. Everybody know my name. Joe Habib's a top soldier. Kid, they should have told you. You really need to pack a lunch. My words hit hard just like a Tyson punch. So give me a chance. I bet you I can make you dance. Show me your girl. I bet you I get in her pants. I'm breaking egos and money is what I'm stacking. Joe Habib on the mic. You know I'm down for action. Shout out to Make Beats Sir and the Beat Smith and the whole Rope-A-Dope radio crew. Yeah. All right, good morning, everybody. This Benn-Eubank story just keeps going on and going on and going on. And as it's been said, already by a lot of boxing media members, this story has gone on longer than any PED story. I mean, I've never seen something dragged out this long before. And the longer this whole story gets dragged out, we continue to hear more and more virtue signaling from the media, right? And I've never been one to go out of my way to defend Eddie Hearn. On the contrary, I've been called the Eddie Hearn hater, a Matchroom hater, because I've been critical of Eddie Hearn in the past for a lot of things he's done, a lot of things he said, and I will continue to criticize him in regards to this situation with Ben, because he's saying everyone's jumping the gun, everyone's saying he's guilty without knowing all the facts. Well, Eddie, you don't know all the facts either, so you can't unequivocally say he's innocent either. And I know there's a bias that you have towards your fighter, but I always said that you should have just taken a neutral stance and just tell everybody, let the process play out, let the investigation take place, and then we'll make a decision after the investigation on whether Conor Benn is innocent or not of these claims, right, with the drug test. So factually, we can't deny that there were two tests that Conor Benn had adverse findings for Clomid, and we're not trying to defend that, right? We're not going to question that. But as I said, Eddie Hearn's stance on, attacking everybody who's skeptical, who has questions, because we've already seen when the shoe was on the other foot how Eddie handled the situation. Really didn't give many people the benefit of the doubt. He said, regardless of the reason, if it's in your system, it's in your system, and you must be held accountable for it. So he needs to be consistent on that with Conor Benn. And also the whole statements with the VADA thing, we already know all that, the hypocrisy. Well, one thing keeps being said, right, particularly from Simon Jordan. And we're hearing a lot of people doing a lot of virtue signaling, right? A lot of smart people who know better, right? And just say things because they know that the general public and the general boxing fan is not going to challenge them, right? Because most people just listen to these guys and they hear what they want to hear. And once again, this virtue signaling about, oh, this guy cheated, this guy's a horrible human being, blah, 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 blah. How could they do this? Ooh, how could they do that? All this false outrage when, again, there's so many more things, in my opinion, that are more dangerous and detrimental to the fighter than PEDs. I've said it, the mismatches, the crazy weight cuts, all this bullshit. If referees not stopping fights when they should have, trainers not pulling fighters out of fights when they should have, there's a lot more dangerous things going on in the sport. But all of a sudden, this is the one thing that everyone loves to latch onto, right? And they continue to latch onto it. But one narrative that's being put out there, and I said particularly by Simon Jordan, is, oh, well, why is Eddie Hearn putting this all on the BBOC, or the BBBOC, I should say, the British Board, the British Boxing Board of Control? Why is he putting it all on them, right? Why didn't he pull the plug as soon as he found out about these tests? Right? Why? Well, the answer is quite simple. And he's already said this. And people should know this, particularly Simon Jordan. He knows about contracts. He knows about legalities. He's dealt in sports before. He's owned a football team before. He knows how contracts work. And when the whole Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua thing was going on, he made it quite clear. Yeah, I've dealt with contracts before in the past. I know how they work. Okay, so if you know how contracts work, right, then why are you being so disingenuous about your representation of this contract situation? Because Eddie Hearn and Kali Sutherland, right, both have a contract with each fighter. Kali Sutherland has a contract with Chris Eubank Jr., and Eddie Hearn has a contract with Conor Benn. And if the British Boxing Board of Control does not stop this fight, does not cancel this fight, does not refuse to sanction this fight, right, then legally Eddie Hearn and Kali Sutherland cannot stop this fight because they will be in breach of contract. They'll be in breach of contract with the fighters, right? They're under contractual obligation to put this fight on, right? If the board does not cancel it, they could be sued, and they will have to pay out damages to their fighters for a fight that does not even happen, right? And then you're hearing Simon Jordan say, well, it shouldn't be up to the fighters. It most certainly should be up to the fighters if legally they can enforce this contract, which they could have if the board did not stop it, because they had a case. Well, why are the promoters pulling the plug on this fight if the board agreed to sanction it? So legally, Eddie Hearn could not pull the plug on this fight because he would have had to pay out damages to his fighter. Kali Sutherland would have had to pay out damages to his fighter, right? Because the fight was still going to be sanctioned by the board. So this whole thing, oh, well, the promoters knew this, the promoters, no. It's the board. The board, really, outside of Conor Benn, the board is the one who should be criticized the most, because it's up to them to cancel the fight. The promoters can't cancel the fight because they're under contractual obligation to have the fight go on, right? Now, if the fighter decides so-and-so failed the test, I don't want to fight him, the fighter can terminate the contract based on that. But if the fighters agree to fight each other, right, and the board sanctions the fight, legally there's nothing that can stop the fight. It's just that clear, plain and simple. So all the virtue signaling and, oh, well, how could they do this? Well, again, you may not like how the legal system works, right? But there's a difference between what is morally right and what is legally right. So and every time people try to cross that line and blur that line between morality and legality, right, that's where things get confused. That's where things get sketchy. So Simon Jordan is being very, very disingenuous here. He knows better. He's a smart guy. He knows that legally Eddie Hearn could not have stopped this fight on his own. And then he makes a statement, well, if this was a $5,000 fight, they definitely would have canceled this fight. Very well, they could. They probably would have, and I'll tell you why. Because if any fighter that's fighting in a $5,000 fight, in a club fight, right, the cost of his legal fees to sue the promoter would exceed the purse he's going to get So why would he even sue the promoter in that case? For him to take legal action against the promoter, he'd be losing money. So it would be a waste of time. So yeah, but that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. You're dealing with millions and millions of dollars here. You think a fighter is going to just sit by and allow a promoter to cancel a fight that the British Boxing Board of Control would have agreed to have sanctioned? I mean, the British Boxing Board of Control has a history of doing things like this, right? When Tyson Fury tested positive, right, back in 2015 in the Christian Hammer fight, they didn't do anything about it, or maybe they were doing something about it, but they were conducting that investigation behind the scenes, and it took them about a year and a half for them to release that information to the public. Right after Fury fought Klitschko, that's when we found out that, hey, he tested positive for nandrolone against Christian Hammer back in 2015. And then he conveniently walks away from the sport because of quote unquote mental health issues, when he was more than likely going to be put under investigation and be suspended pending the investigation, right? So the board is notorious for doing stuff like this. And then the way the process is not Eddie Hearn's fault, right? It's not Eddie Hearn's fault. When someone tests positive, if VADA wasn't in place here, then, and it was just UCOD, Chris Eubank Jr. may not have known. Just like in the Oscar Rivas, Dillian White situation, where Oscar Rivas didn't even know that Dillian White popped positive for a PED until after Dillian White went before the board, right? So when Simon Jordan makes these statements, oh, he's putting it all on the board, because it's mostly the board's fault, the way this thing was handled, right? It's mostly I put 99.9% of the blame on the board, because they had the authority right from the jump to stop this fight. And again, it's different how things are handled in the UK as opposed to the United States. When something like this happens, more often than not, we find out about it right away. But in the UK, particularly in Great Britain, a lot of times fighters have to go before the board. They do an investigation. And until that investigation, or until the meeting with the board has taken place, usually after that is when the information comes out. And that's not really a good system. So blame the system. But from a legal standpoint, Eddie Hearn did nothing wrong. And I'm hearing, oh, Eddie Hearn's a coward. Oh, how could he was going to let this fight go on? Yeah, because he had to let the fight go on. He was legally bound to allow the fight to go on, because his fighter would have sued him for breach of contract, right? If he canceled the fight before the board made a decision on how they were going to handle the situation, he would have been in breach of contract. And so would have Kali Sauerland. Oh, so you're going to allow the fighters to make the decision on, whether or not they want to fight each other based on the drugs that are being taken. He has no fucking choice, Simon. No fucking choice from a legal standpoint. And as I said, yeah, if the fight wasn't as big, the promoters probably would have canceled it. Because once again, if a fighter's fighting for a $3,000 purse or a $5,000 purse, he's not going to have the resources to hire a lawyer and sue the promoter, because again, his legal costs would exceed the purse he would be getting. So it wouldn't make sense. Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. are multimillionaires. They most definitely are able to hire top level legal teams and lawyers and advisors to take care of their case. So in this situation, there's just a lot of misinformation being put out there. Eddie Hearn could not cancel this fight. Could not. If anything, he could have had the fight go on, possibly. He could have. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if that's an accurate statement because of what the whole Brexit situation. I don't know if he would have been able to have another commission come in. He says he could have. I don't know. I'm not going to speak on that. Right? But Eddie Hearn had to wait for the commission, British Boxing Board of Control, to make the decision first, because if he did not, like I said before, he would have been in breach of contract. So enough with this whole fucking virtue signaling. Oh, all they care about is the money. Again, in the real world, yeah, money is the determining factor. People do make decisions based off of money first. Yeah, that's how it is. So this whole idealistic bullshit about, oh, what's morally right, the right thing to do. Again, do not hold people accountable and do not hold people to standards that you would not hold for yourself, right? So I have to question Simon Jordan here. Is he doing this just for clicks? Right? Is he doing this just so people will talk about him, so they can put his name in the headlines? Because ever since he's come out and challenged Eddie Hearn on this, look at how many headlines he's grabbed. Look how many stories have been written about him. Look how many video clips he's in and people are taking and talking about him. So he's trying to make this more about him versus Eddie than the reality of the situation. Let's deal with the world we have, not the world we want. Okay, let's deal with the world we have, not with the world we want. All this fake bullshit virtue signaling where everyone has this holier than thou attitude and this false outrage. Oh, how can we allow this to happen? This is so horrible. Oh my goodness. Where are these people when there's a Rod Salka put in the ring with a Danny Garcia, a guy who has virtually no chance of winning the fight, and his health is more at risk because of the gap in skill, right? Or these weight cuts. Where are all these people then? Or when these fights don't get stopped when they should? Where's all that? But no, this whole PED thing, this is the thing that everybody wants to jump on, because this is the flavor of the month. This is the hot topic. This is the hot button issue that gets everybody clicks when they talk about it, right? Because no one cares about the other stuff. And probably most people don't even care about this, but they just want a virtue signal so they can get attention for their media outlets. So they want to get clicks because it makes them look like they're better than someone else. They're going to be on this moral high ground above everybody else. Oh, see how virtuous I am. This, that, and the third. People's lives are at risk. Blah, 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 blah. Really, really exaggerating everything just to kind of virtue signal and make a situation look much, much worse than it is. Okay? So at the end of the day, Simon Jordan's wrong here. Simon Jordan's wrong here because making statements like, oh, well, Eddie Hearn's putting it on the board, because he's right. It is their fault. It is their fault. If you were in his position, Simon, and your lawyers are telling you, well, legally, if you cancel this fight without the board canceling it, you can get sued for millions and millions of dollars, and you're going to have to pay out a settlement to your fighter. And basically, you're paying for a fight that you're paying a fighter for not fighting, right? So Conor Benn would have been in position, if the board did not cancel this fight, to get paid out his purse or a great portion of it, or probably the whole thing, possibly on top of legal fees. So Eddie Hearn's just going to allow that to happen. He's just going to, like Simon Jordan, would you do that? If you were in the same position of Eddie Hearn and you were being advised that if you cancel this fight, and then you could be sued by Kali Saraland and Chris Eubank Jr. So if Eddie Hearn says, I'm pulling Conor Benn out, or I refuse to promote this fight, and then what about the zone? What if the zone is saying, hey, you can't pull the plug on this until we get word from the commission, from the British Boxing Board of Control? Eddie Hearn is under obligation to deliver this fight to the zone as well. Right? So Eddie Hearn was not in position to just say, hey, I'm going to cancel this fight. Right? Legally, he couldn't do that because the zone could have taken issue with him as well. So if Eddie Hearn just decides, hey, Matchroom is no longer going to be involved in this fight, we're stepping away here, he would have had to have answered to the zone. He would have had to answer to Conor Benn. He would have had to have answered to Chris Eubank Jr. And he would have had to answer to Kali Saraland. So legally, you want to oversimplify this thing because most boxing, with all due respect, most boxing fans are just going to look at the headline and they're not going to really look underneath the surface of the reality of the situation, right? They're going to listen to guys like Simon Jordan who are going to virtue signal, oh, they knew about this months ago and they did nothing about it. Well, yeah, because they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't do anything about it legally. And that's just the facts. And I'm not here to defend Eddie Hearn. I'm here to defend reality. I'm here to defend and fight against this bullshit virtue signaling that is out there. People just say things just to say things because it's cool. Everyone wants to stand up on their soapbox. Everyone wants something to rally against. Oh, I'm against this. I'm against that. Because people go out of their way nowadays to try to put themselves on a pedestal. Oh, I'm so and everyone wants to shame everybody. All right. People want to add to, subtract from others to add to themselves in this world nowadays. Right. Oh, how could you? How could they let this? Because it's the board's fault. The board has continuously mishandled situations like this time and time again. They did it with the Dillian White situation with Oscar Rivas when Oscar Rivas wasn't even aware of Dillian White failing that test, right? And it was up to the board to let them know, to let Oscar Rivas know. And I guess it wasn't up to the board to let Oscar Rivas know based on their ruling, but their rules need to be changed. The system needs to be changed. If you want to criticize the system, criticize the system. If you want to criticize the board, criticize the board. But the board, it's the board's job, first and foremost, to take care and protect the safety of the fighters. That's the board's job, right? It's really not Eddie Hearn's job to protect his fighter in terms of safety. Eddie Hearn's job is to make his fighter the most money and make himself the most money. I know you don't like to hear that, but that's the reality of the situation. The commissions are in place, right, to protect the fighter, not the promoters. So if you're going to take the responsibility off the commissions and take that responsibility and put it on the promoters, then you're wrong. Okay? You got it backwards. That's not how it works. All right? Now, obviously, in a perfect idealistic world, you would think that the promoter would have the common decency to protect his fighter, right? And look out for his fighter, right? And you could say that Eddie Hearn has done that for his fighters, has taken care of his fighters, but he could also criticize them in the same breath. When he allowed that Conor, like when he had that Conor, not the Conor Benn fight, but the Cal Brook fight against Golovkin. Some people would argue that ruined Kell Brook's career, but it was a money grab, right? But he has kind of protected Joshua in certain respects too. Like with this situation right now, I think that he possibly advised Joshua not to take the Fury fight, and possibly advised him, hey, let's wait till next year, take some time off, whatever. But it's not the promoter's job to protect the fighter. The promoter's job is to make money, right? I have to ask. Let me challenge you, Simon Jordan. When you had your football club, did you go out? Were you out there protecting your fighter? Were you worried about them getting their physicals, and were you checking their medicals? And no, that wasn't your job to do that. You were in charge of the financial part of the team, right? It was your job to make money. It's Eddie Hearn's job to make money for him and his fighter, right? That's his job. It's the commission's job to worry about the safety of the fighters, not the promoter's job. So yes, it's not Eddie Hearn putting it all on the commission. Basically, it is the commission's job to do the right thing here. It's not Eddie Hearn's job to step in and cancel a fight that he's legally obligated to put on. That's it. That's it. Eddie Hearn was in no legal position to stop this fight or pull Matchroom from this fight without getting confirmation from the commission whether or not they were going to sanction this fight. Simple and plain. It's just the reality of the situation. You can virtue signal all you want. You can criticize Eddie Hearn all you want. And I've been one of the biggest critics of Eddie Hearn. And I hated the way he handled this, because I thought he should have just stayed neutral in this. Obviously, you care about your fighter. You're going to be biased towards your fighter. You have a relationship with your fighter. You want to say, well, I know Conor Benn as a person. It's hard for me to believe that, he would knowingly take this. But once again, an investigation needs to be done. I'm going to let the process play out. And hopefully he will be found innocent of this. But you're automatically saying he's innocent. You don't want people to say he's guilty, right, before the investigation. But you're already saying he's innocent before the investigation. And obviously you have a bias. I get that. But here's the thing. Just let the process play out. Don't even say anything about whether or not he knowingly took the drug or not. And then you're saying, oh, well, the science supports Conor Benn here. It doesn't. Doesn't really. I've known several people who have taken that drug. I know people who had that drug prescribed to them at a TRT clinic, at HRT clinics. And again, it's hard for that to get in your system due to contamination. And you have to acknowledge that, Eddie. So to sit there and say that or imply that there's a strong chance that it's contamination, that's what you want to believe, right? You want to criticize Eddie Hearn for that stuff, yeah. But this whole thing about him allowing the fight to go on, he had no fucking choice. Let's just be real about it. And even if you don't like the way the commission handled it, right? Is it helpful to you to publicly attack the commission? Go at the commission? All you could say was, legally, I could not, right from the jump, what you should have said was, legally, I could not have stopped this fight without the commission making the decision first, because I would have been in breach of contract with my fighter, with the co-promoter, and with his fighter. And that's what you should have said right from the jump. And I understand, it's hard sometimes you're under the gun. It's easy for me to say all these things on the outside looking in. But what you should have done was you should have taken a step back, right? And you shouldn't have went right out there. You should have strategized a little bit better and come up with better statements to present to the press than you did. Because from a PR standpoint, you handled it horribly. And if Simon Jordan wants to attack you for that, that's fine. But this whole moral ground of, oh, these promoters, all they care about money. Oh, yeah, that's their fucking job, Simon. In the real world, that's what fucking promoters are supposed to worry about. And as shitty as it sounds, it's not the promoter's job to worry about the health of the fighter. Obviously, they have an investment with the fighter, so of course they want the fighter to be healthy so they can make money off the fighter. But it's not their job to worry, check up on the fighter. Hey, what are you putting in your body? Blah, 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 blah. No, that's the fucking fighter's job to do that. He can't babysit Conor Benn. Right? He can't babysit Conor Benn. So let's be real about the situation. The reason why Eddie Hearn and Kali Sauerland and Wasserman did not pull the plug on this fight was because legally they could not do it. Because if they tried to pull the plug without the commission, then they would have been sued out the yin-yang. And the fighters would have sued them. The fighters would have sued them. They definitely would have sued them. Conor Benn, and that's why when they were talking, that's why when Eddie Hearn and Kali Sauerland were talking about the lawyers, and they were, we're talking to the legal, we're dealing with the lawyers here, or the legal teams are sorting this out. I mean, this is what was going on behind the scenes, right? For all we know, Eddie Hearn probably wanted to stop the fight. He probably wanted to stop the fight, but he was told, hey, you got to wait for the commission, because if you try to stop this fight without knowing whether or not the commission is going to sanction it, again, you're going to be in breach. And that's a simple, and I hate to keep repeating myself, but I have to hammer that point home. I know I'm sounding a little redundant here, but that point really needs to be hammered home, because it's not, people don't understand it. People don't understand it, or they don't want to understand it, because people like Simon Jordan want a virtue signal, and they don't want to deal in reality. They want to deal in morality. They don't want to deal in reality. And unfortunately, we don't live in a world where morality is at the forefront. It's not. Everybody wants to make a buck, right? And I can go down the list of all the wrongs in this world, right? But don't hold people to standards you would not hold to yourself. Anyone in Eddie Hearn's position who was being advised by a lawyer, by a legal team, and dealing with the fighter's legal team as well, communicating, having Eddie Hearn's lawyers communicate with Conor Benn's lawyers. Obviously, Matchroom has a legal team so they have to protect themselves, make sure they're dotting all their I's and crossing their T's. If they're being told, if Simon Jordan, if you're in Eddie Hearn's position and you're being told by your lawyer, by your legal team that, hey, legally, if we pull the plug on this without the commission making the decision, we're in breach. And we would have to pay, we could quite possibly have to pay out this guy's purse without him even fighting, right? So it's that simple. It's that simple. So again, we deal in reality, right? We deal in reality here. We deal in the world. We deal with the world we have, not the world we want. Right? This is not the virtue signal channel. This is not the fucking false outrage channel, right? This is not the We Are the World channel, right? I know everyone wants to paint this picture, and they want to create this idealistic world, right? And all everyone cares about is money. Yeah. That's basically what the world is. Right? It's basically what the world is. Right? Basically what the world is. And the way the commission, right, handled this, and they want to say, and they can't even, they're still, the commission is the ones. You want to call Eddie Hearn a coward, you want to call Eddie Hearn spineless, which I don't believe he is in this situation. What about the British Boxing Board of Control? Oh, they won't even suspend him pending an investigation for PEDs. Oh, misconduct. Once again, what the fuck? What's the misconduct? The misconduct is, yeah, he tested positive had an adverse finding on a PED test. No, it's not sad that it's all about the money, because that's how everyone is. People will sit there and lie and they'll pretend, but we live our lives based off of money. We get up every day and go to work because of money. A lot of us, quite luckily, I'm not in this position anymore because I'm in a job that I particularly love. How many people wake up every day, go to jobs they hate, right? Because of money, right? How many relationships end because of money? That's the thing, man. Like, we want to lie and we want to virtue signal and we want to pretend that, what reality isn't the truth, right? People want to talk idealistically, but in their own lives, they're living realistically, but they want to portray this idealistic outlook on how the world should be. But once again, that's not how it works. Okay? All everyone cares about is money. All they care about is money. Yeah, because that's when you're a businessman, that is your objective, to make money. Okay? That is your job, to make money. When you got LeBron James, you got Michael Jordan, they got all these deals with these endorsement companies, and you got Michael Jordan who's made hundreds of millions of dollars over the years with Air Jordans. But how do you think those Air Jordans became so profitable? Because there's some young 13-year-old kid in Taiwan who's making those sneakers for probably 15 cents. Right? But no one cares about that. No one cares about that. And LeBron James wants to sit there and attack people and criticize people, but once again, he doesn't care about China. He has no problem working with China, dealing with China, having the NBA go over to China, right? So again, let's be real about it. We want to pick and choose who's the bad guy. When everyone's the same when it comes to money. Everyone cares about. Again, the problem is greed over morality. Well, greed makes the world go round, brother. We're all greedy. We all want the best deal. We all try to get things for the lowest price we can. We all try to make the most money we can. That's the reality of the world. Greed is good. Just like the movie, greed is good. Wall Street, greed is good. That's the reality of the situation. We try to lie and pretend that it's not all about money. It is all about money. What do you think? Fighters fight for free? Think promoters put these fights on because they don't want to make money? That's the job. That's the job. If you're going to spend your day virtue signaling and attacking everyone who you believe is putting money over virtue, then what can I say? You're living in a dream world. Greed is good, man. Greed is good. Unfortunately, greed is good. Or kill people, which is a Simon Jordan virtue signaling comment. Because if you're worried about people dying, then you're not going to allow them to fight in weight classes where they're losing 20 pounds and dehydrating themselves. You're not going to put a guy in there who's a 50-1 underdog against a guy who he has virtually no chance. How do you know rich people aren't happy? Poor people aren't happy either. We're gonna lie to ourselves and pretend that money isn't important. That's the thing. Greed is good. No, let's not all get fat. Let's not all get fat, because if you have a lot of money, guess what you can do? You can buy the best food, have the best health care, buy the best supplements, right? Put a gym in your house so you wake up every day, walk down the stairs, go in your basement, work out, jump on a treadmill, right? Let's just let's do a quite let's do a let's look at statistics. Who's more healthier, rich people or poor people? Who eats more junk food, rich people or poor people? Who goes to McDonald's more, rich people or poor people? Here we deal in reality here, man. We can go back and forth all day of what of living in the world we want instead of living in the world we have. We can do it. We can virtue signal. We can be idealistic. You know, and this isn't about you, Maestro. I love going back and forth with you, man, because I'm using basic Joe Beep tactics on you. I haven't even unleashed the intermediate ones on you yet, but we've had several conversations offline about money, and if money wasn't important, you and I wouldn't be talking about it, brother. No one wants to do shit for free. Everyone wants to get paid the most they can for their time, brother. Do I like capital? Well, again, greed. You don't live. You have to live your life, right? You have to hold a position consistent with the way you live your life. You don't walk into a job going in there and saying, well, I don't care about how much money I make. I just want to contribute to society. When you go in your job every day, do you say, I just want to help the kids? You don't have to pay me you don't have to pay me a lot of money. Greed is good, bro. It motivates you. Money's a motivator, bro. As much as I don't like capitalism 100%. I think we need a combination of both. I do think we need to help people. I do think we need some degree of socialism. I do believe that. I don't believe everyone starts at the same starting point, and people always want to point to outliers, exceptions to the rule. But the majority of times, if you don't have the resources to education, healthcare, you don't have a two-parent household, you are set up to fail, and you have greater obstacles to have to overcome. But anyone who negotiates for a higher salary is greedy. Because if you didn't care about money, you would take the lowest possible salary that you could take, and you'd be happy with it. Needing money it's the same thing, bro. The same thing. Because technically, we could all live in shacks. We don't have to have televisions. We don't have to have telephones. We don't have to have the best clothes. We don't have to have a car. And this is coming from a guy who drives a 2009 Toyota Yaris, bro. I could buy a much better car if I want, but everyone has different things that they value. Everyone has their things that they like. You know what I mean? So, yeah, this whole thing. Oh well, they're putting money first. That's generally what everyone does. Everyone puts money first. Why do most relationships end? Do the statistics. It's because of money, right? We'll watch the ungreedy boxers like Zerto and Bivol fight. They both get millions of dollars, brother. They're not fighting for fucking pennies on the dollar. They're fighting for millions of dollars, bro. So I want everyone when they go to work today to tell their boss, hey, you know what? I'm just happy to do this job. I love this job. You don't have to give me a raise. Guess what? Guess what? You don't even have to you don't have to give me healthcare anymore. I'll pay for it myself. I want to save you money. I'm here because I want to help this company. I think what we're doing here is morally great. We're doing great things here. We're helping people. I'll work for free, man. I'll work for free. Pay me or pay me just enough where I can just get by. I could pay my mortgage or I don't care about the money. None of us live our lives that way. None of us live our lives that way. So here's where you're missing the point, Maestro. You're arguing against fair wages. You're arguing against wealth disparity, right? That's what you're arguing against. But what people need to do at the 1% is, I believe that the gap should be closed. I think I think we do need a middle class. I do think we have a wealth disparity. I do think that workers are exploited in certain situations. That's why I'm pro union. But once again, there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. That's why I believe that capitalism is not the greatest system. That's why we do have a degree of socialism in our economy. We do have social programs. Maestro, you and I have had plenty of conversations about money. If money is so unimportant, then why do you complain about doing things for free? Why do you want to get paid for your work then? Why don't you just do it for the fun of it? You don't live your life the way the way that you don't walk the walk. You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. You don't live your life the way you're describing right now. Like, you're against things, but you don't live your life. You're contradicting yourself by the way you live your life, because you are always concerned about making money. A lot of our conversations are about you making money. Yeah, you don't want to do things for free. Maestro, if someone told you right now that you can make $1 million a year, right? You can make $1 million a year, and they hired you to make $1 million a year, and you loved the job. Would you sit there and say, "Oh, well, what about the other guy who's not making $1 million a year? I'll only take this $1 million if my friend gets it too." I mean, it's just, people don't operate that way, bro. People say things, but they don't live their life the way they expect others to. You'll criticize someone else, and I do think that we have price gouging. I do think workers are exploited, right? So you want to talk about, changing systems, right? But at the end of the day, it's in our brains, right? It's in our brains to always want the most we can get, right? We always want the best of things. Right? We always want the best of things. Right? So if you want to talk about collective bargaining, you want to talk about fair wages for workers, you want to talk about all that thing, you already know I'm on board with that. But at the end of the day, everyone that works for a living, they want to make the most money they can. No one ever says Hey, just pay me what you think. Just pay me what you want. I'll accept it. We all have some degree of greed to us. It's in our nature. That's just how we're wired. That's how we're wired. We all want to make the most money we can. We all try to buy things at the lowest price we can. We always try to get the most bang for our buck. That's how we operate. So when we criticize others for doing it, now it's one thing about exploiting people. It's one thing about cheating people. It's one thing about abusing people. It's one thing about taking advantage of people, right? That's another thing, right? It's one thing about fucking people over. It's one thing about paying people, you know, trying to nickel and dime someone for their work. I understand all that. It is greed. You're trying to put a negative connotation on a word, right? You're just taking the word, and because there's always been a negative connotation on that word, you're not looking at it objectively, bro. We all have some degree of greed in us. It's our nature. Have you ever gone to a buffet, right? And eaten more than you should have? Have you ever gone to a buffet and walk up to the buffet and eat 3 plates of food? Has anyone ever done that? I did it 2 weeks ago, twice in 1 week. I went to the Yucatan buffet. I had 3 plates. I must have consumed 2,500 calories in one sitting. What do you call that? That's greed, right? It's greed. We all have a degree of greed in us. All of us. All of us. We got to accept who we are as human beings and stop trying to be what people tell us we should be, or people tell us who we should pretend to be. And let's just be who we are. Let's just be real. Just like anything else in life, there's positives and negatives. If you don't control, if you can't control your greed, that could be a problem. But we all have some degree of greed. And everybody, as human beings, we are selfish to a degree. Sometimes you should put yourself before others, because if you live your life constantly putting others above yourself, then you become a people pleaser. Right? Sometimes you have to be selfish. Sometimes you have to be selfish in your relationship, right? Because not all relationships are conditional. They're not unconditional. In theory, everyone is greedy. Yes, we all are. Ryan, when we place a bet, right? What do? Do we bet $1,000 to make 100, or do we try to bet $100 to make 1,000? What do we do? What do we do, brother? We're greedy. We want to put up the least amount of money and get the most amount back. Why? Because we're greedy. That's what we are. Have you ever eaten a cookie, right? And then after eating that one cookie, you eat 10 more? That's greed. It's part of our nature. It's who we are as human beings. Embrace it. But once again, like anything else, you have to control it, right? You have to control it. Everything's about balance, right? Everything's about balance. If you're greedy to the point where you're hurting society, For instance, these pharmaceutical companies are making billions and billions of dollars, right? And do they need to make billions and billions of dollars? No. So if your greed is hurting people, for instance, if what the pharmaceutical companies are doing is they're hurting a society, right? If I eat 10 cookies in front of you and don't offer me a single cookie, that is greed. Buy your own bag. You cheap bastard. You make a good salary. Buy your own bag of fucking cookies. You don't need the Beebs cookies. But what the pharmaceutical companies do, that level of greed, in my opinion, where you're hurting millions and millions of people who could be productive participants in society. So that's a situation where greed can be bad. Greed can spiral out of control, and it could become a problem. That's no question. But to sit there and say that every like that we all have a bit of greediness inside of us, it's disingenuous. So it's that simple. I don't know how this thing took a turn, but I gotta jump off, man. I'll check you guys later. Make sure you check out the roundtable tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Myself, D Style, got a great panel here. Eric Lord is going to be on as well. Base the Kid. Box Talk's going to be with us. Dave 408's coming on. We got a great panel tonight. But until next time, Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day. And once again, deal in reality. Deal in reality. Accept the world that we have, not the world we want. Peace out, everybody.